Right, good morning everybody. June the 8th planning meeting, planning committee. I'll start with a quick announcement. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeated viewing for 12 months. If you are seated in this room, you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and any contributions to the meeting will be recorded and broadcast. Okay, thank you. So we start this meeting. First of all, could we please have declarations? Apologies, please.
Yep, we've got apologies from Councillor Waring and Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you. I understand a couple of members have got prior arranged meetings. They've got to leave a little bit early, but we should still be quorate. So that's if we lose two, are we still quorate? Good. Okay. We'll move on to item number 2, please. Declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations? Would you like to state the what the interest is, please?
Yes, Chairman. Item 6A, I live right next door to where the works will be taken, where the actual where the proposed works are going to be travelling to. So that would be, I'm discussing with planning officers. The officers I decided that obviously I won't vote on this, and I'll leave the room for that decision.
I understand you will be allowed to speak on it if you require to. Okay, thank you. No others? No. Okay. Can we move on to item number 3? Has everyone seen the minutes of the 6th of April?
Yeah, move them, Chairman.
Okay, a seconder, and the panel happy with it? Okay, thank you. We'll sign those after the meeting. The next item is appointment of members to the Countryside Rights of Way panel. The recommendation is that the committee appoint 7 members to sit on the Countryside and Rights of Way panel. The recommendation from group leaders are the following members be appointed to the Countryside Rights of Way panel: Mark Winnington, David Smith, Jill Waring, Jack Abrahams, Paul Snape, Robert Pritchard and Philip Hudson. And there is an addendum that if we do need to change any members in the future, we do it through the next planning meeting. So if anyone's in between the two has a problem, please come to me and discuss it. Okay, are we happy with those appointments? Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. And we'll move next, please, on to the annual report of the safety of sports grounds. I think the two gentlemen, would you like to proceed, please, and introduce yourself if possible?
Thank you, Chair. My name's Tony Shaw. I'm the Operations Manager for Stafford County Council Trading Standards. Trading Standards are responsible for the enforcement of the legislation relating to the safety of sports grounds. Good morning. You will see the report is prepared annually and informs the committee of the safety of sports grounds work completed during the last financial year. It describes the County Council's statutory obligations and outlines the activity that has taken place to ensure that these duties have been met. The report describes the background and context of the safety of sports grounds activity, as well as detailing the planned activity for the coming year to ensure the Council continues to meet its statutory obligations in this area. Turning to page 2 of the report, section 2 explains that the County Council is responsible for administering the Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975 and the Fire Safety and Safety at Sports Grounds Act 1987 in respect to sports grounds in Staffordshire. You will see that the duty relates to designated grounds, which are sports grounds with a capacity of over 10,000 people or 5,000 for football. These grounds require a safety certificate granted by the local authority. In Staffordshire, this relates to Burton Albion Football Club only. Sports stadiums with a covered capacity of over 500 people standing or seated spectators, known as regulated stands, require a safety certificate. These are granted by the local authority, and Staffordshire has 7 of these, which are detailed at 2.4, which is on page 1 of the report. The remainder of section 2 details the SCC responsibilities. The way that we focus our enforcement activity to ensure that it's actually done effectively is by a process called risk management, and you will see that detailed on page 3. Section 3 explains how the service focuses its resource and activity in those areas that pose the greatest risk. Sections 4 and 5 detail the risk assessment rating applied to each ground or stand, and these can be found on page 2 and 3. Moving on to section 6, which is on page 4, this details the work with Burton Albion Football Club, which is the only designated ground within Staffordshire. It's fair to say that the 2022-23 year has seen a significant change of key personnel at the club, and this includes the departure of the safety officer towards the end of the football season. The safety officer is one of the key people within the club responsible for safety of spectators and people attending the club. This has necessitated a high level of involvement from officers. The club has put in place temporary arrangements and engaged the support of a suitably experienced safety officer to enable the club to continue to host their home fixtures safely. The completed activity at Burton Albion is listed at 6.1.3, including the issuing of a revised safety certificate and 2 event day inspections. Sections 6.2 and 6.3 detail the activity carried out by officers for high risk and medium risk venues. All venues have received at least 1 event day inspection and 1 non-event day inspection. I'm not sure if members are aware of the incidents that happened at Tamworth, which was a game between Tamworth and Nuneaton, which resulted in the abandonment of a match. It was a particularly challenging issue for the club and for local police, and a full extraordinary SAG was held on the 3rd of March to consider the incident and consider the safety aspects around that. Following the SAG meeting, the Safety Advisory Group meeting, there were no concern raised post the incident, and it's fair to say that the measures that the club had put in place and the people that were involved with that, it was a robust and satisfactory arrangement that was in place, and it was really down to the unusual circumstances that were happening at that particular time. The club, the safety team and the key SAG partners continued post-FA and league review to review the incident, and the replay of the fixture took place on the 20th of April 23. Section 6.4 and Appendix 3 detailed the inspection planning for the current year, and this will include assisting venue safety management teams with the planning towards the implementation of Martin's Law. The committee will be aware that Martin's Law, also known as the Protect Duty, is a new piece of legislation designed to ensure that the public is better protected from the multifaceted, diverse and continually evolving terror threat. This is post-Manchester Arena, essentially. It's the learns from Manchester Arena that have been implemented into legislation to ensure that similar events are less likely to happen in the future. The duty places a requirement on those responsible for certain venues, including sports grounds, to consider the threat from terrorism and implement appropriate and proportionate mitigation measures. And obviously, the team will be looking at how clubs and venues actually implement that legislation, ensure that those duties are adhered to. The committee will also be aware of the Ironman event that took place last year, and the details of that particular event are on page 6 of the report. The team chaired the SAG for the event, the Safety Advisory Group for the event, which took place on Sunday the 12th. I don't know if members of the committee are aware of an incident that occurred during the swim element of the Chasewater venue, which unfortunately resulted in the tragic death of a competitor. A full investigation was carried out and the cause of death was determined as natural causes. The SAG chair, supported by Catherine Mann, who's the interim Assistant Director for Culture, Rural and Safer Communities, facilitated an extraordinary safety advisory group meeting following the event to review the multi-agency response to this tragic event. High level of engagement and participation was received from a core of SAG members. I think it's fair to say that the planning and the implementation of the safety controls for that event was found to be robust. And it was a natural death that the safety controls that have been put in place were adequate to deal with. I would further draw the members of the committee attention to section 8, which highlights the resources drawn from trading standards for this period. And you will see from that it's equivalent to about 0.5 full-time equivalent to 0.7 full-time equivalent officers engaged in this activity. Section 9, page 7 of the report covers the SGSA audit. The SGSA is the government body who's responsible auditing the local authorities' enforcement and implementation of the controls around safety of sports grounds. This audit took place in December 22 and recommendations were made and have subsequently been completed. These are detailed in Appendix 2, which is page 17 to the report. In summary, the inspector found that the service continued to improve on our previous good inspection and was complimentary about the work that the officers engaged in. There has been, you'll see in section 9, there has been a change to the scheme of delegation to allow officers to issue a prohibition notice under the Fire Safety and Safety of Places of Sport Act 1987. And that's basically to ensure that if there is a risk to spectators that's immediate, that it can be dealt with swiftly. In conclusion, Section 10 highlights to members that 2023 has been a successful year for the Trading Standards team. All planned work at designated ground, high and medium risk venues with regulated stands has been fully completed, thus ensuring engagement with all venues following some of the interruption to the inspection regime as a result of the impact of COVID-19. Significant focus was required by the team to ensure that the facilities were operated in accordance with the required standards, that they were safe and operated in an appropriate manner. And finally, the details of the inspections and engagement programme carried out during 2022-23 is at Appendix 1, page 11, while page 18, Appendix 3, details the planned work for the coming year. That concludes my report. I don't know if there's any questions from any of the committee or...
Right, well, thank you very much for that excellent report, succinct but full of information. Thank you. I've got two members that want to speak. I'll start with John Francis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A remit of me, can I declare an interest that I'm a member of Staffordshire County Showground? Right to the report. I'd just like to ask, considering the Manchester Arena tragedy and the report that came out with blue light services not attending and the major incidents we have, considering that no member of this authority is either, because there's the fire authority and the police committee was wound up and it was all passed to the current commissioner, how we monitor that situation and how we emphasise that blue light services must attend situations like that without any regard to their safety, because I find it absolutely disgraceful what went on there, that senior commanders, Silver Command and Gold Command, refused to allow their officers into the area within about between 2 and 5 hours, which was an absolute disgrace. How can we guarantee that we're going to get the right response?
Could I just cut in there? If we're going to put members of the County Council, members of the showground down, I put in a personal interest in that as well, and so Councillor Snape and Hudson. Thank you, John, for pointing out that we have got an interest. A national problem, but a local aspect. Could you answer that, please?
Sure. So a bit of background, really. So with any event that is within either a regulated or designated ground, so that's the 7 regulated stands that we've got within the authority, or the designated ground, which is Burton Albion, there is what's known as a safety advisory group. The safety advisory group consists of all blue light services. It consists of the safety officer generally from the club itself, and a range of other professional people that come together, and the whole idea of that safety advisory group is to ensure that in peacetime you can actually plan for any event that might occur within that ground or within that particular premise. So the safety advisory group meets on a regular basis. It's at least, within our authority, it's at least annually. And they sit down essentially and look at the way that the ground or the premises are being managed. They look at the fabric of it. They look at the way that the premises is being managed from a safety perspective, and also look and consider carefully the key players within that particular ground or premise to ensure that they're competent and qualified to do the work that they should be doing. The whole essence of that safety advisory group is to plan, and is to plan for safety, so that if there is ever a significant event, that the plans have already been thought through beforehand to ensure that the blue light services and any other service that gets involved can, for example, access the ground safely and things like that. So I think it's fair to say that whilst they can't rule out every eventuality, there's a lot of work that goes into considering the way that the premise is run to ensure that it's run safely, so that if there is ever, I apologise, any safety critical situation, that it's been considered and plans have been made to ensure that it's dealt with effectively. I don't know if that answers. It's a very broad answer.
I mean, years ago when I was on the fire authority, we did a gold command course. We went down to Warwickshire to the fire services area down there and did a gold command course, so we saw how it worked. Is there any input that this authority from a member can go to a gold command incident when there's a serious incident to observe, just to make sure that things are being done in accordance with us, but because we're all responsible here. You know, once we become a member of this authority, we're responsible for the safety of our constituents.
Can I cut in there again? I think this is a separate item from the planning committee, and I think that you need to approach Ben Adams, the commissioner, on that, and I'm sure he'll be.
You've got to do it, Chairman, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Remind me after the meeting about that then. Thank you. Now we've got Paul Snape next, and then Mike Sutherland.
Thank you. Exit report, as the Chairman has said. Just going back to the Tamworth, the Nuneaton football match. During my police career, I was involved in football violence on many occasions, having led the Wolves undercover operation in '87. On that night, Staff's police couldn't supply any officers when it was going on. There'd been 3 or 4 incidents during the game before it was actually stopped. Mutual aid had to be called from West Midlands. Can I just ask if the final report on the incident will say why the planning wasn't there for staff to be prepared in case anything did go wrong, and why it had to be called from West Midlands? Staffs are the police force who cover the area, and they couldn't supply on the night. Thank you.
I don't think we need an answer on that. So that was a statement. Mike Sutherland.
It's a question for an answer. But
Yeah.
The answer might be able to give it now, except you may have to come back in future case by email or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Then can officers answer that in any way, or?
I can't answer on behalf of Staffordshire Police, but obviously we'll make the appropriate inquiries and provide as much information as we can do.
It's not really on behalf of Staffordshire Police, it's on behalf of who did the planning for the night itself. Were they cut into it or whatever? There should have been contingent plan there if the wheel did come off, as it did, that Staff's Police knew about it, they had officers ready to come, public order turnout. I mean, myself and Phil just talked about that really. So that's all. That's really what planning was done in case it came off. That's all, and that's part of your remit, really.
Can I suggest that you write a letter to respond to that one when you find a bit more out, and please pass it on to Kirsty, who'll pass it on to the committee. Thank you, Mike.
Chair, sorry, just to clarify a little bit. I think it's important to understand that part of, in broad terms, part of the planning and preparation and the background to any event or any situation like that, there's a number of contingency exercises that take place. So, for example, at Utoxeter, we'll run a contingency exercise will take place, which includes your blue light services and Staffordshire Police as well. So that's just given a bit more context, if you like, to running things in as best we can in real time. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for the answer. Mike Sutherland, please.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thanks for a very comprehensive report. My question really is about moving forward, and in particular, concentrating on Appendix 3. Which is the planning and inspection engagement and activities for this year. Do you anticipate that there will be any time delays or with implementing the Martin's Law? Because I noticed there's a number of activities, detailed time delivery, but equally there's a number that without any timings on them. Thank you.
So, in summary, what we will be doing is we'll be looking at the certificates that relate to each particular venue, and to ensure that Martin Law is fully implemented, the local authority will be including a condition within the certificate to ensure that the premise complies in broad terms with Martin's Law. So that's the starting point. And then following from that, obviously the various, particularly the police services that are involved with that, will be implementing that, and the local authority will be implementing that on a case-by-case basis, depending on the So, you know, you can imagine you've got a range of clubs running from, you know, quite small clubs to quite large clubs. So it will be done basically, you know, the higher risk will be done first, and most resource will be put in there first, and then the smaller venues, they'll be, you know, later on, I would imagine. But I anticipate that we get that work done within the financial year.
Thank you very much. We've got Caroline Trowbridge next, and then Phil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appendix 2, page 28 on the computer. This is your action plans for from the audit report. 1, 2 and 3 are very encouraging, ensure, implement, complete. But 4 just says encourage the clubs to do. Why only encourage? You know, why aren't we sort of enforcing things more so? Is one of my questions, and I'll give them you both. And then as you follow down, you mentioned things are partially complete and ongoing. That's 1 and 3. Is that just always ongoing, or because we don't get told which bit is partially complete or ongoing? Is that something that is always ongoing, or very little done on it? Just 2 questions.
It's a continuous process. I don't know if that answers you. It's ongoing, and with the it's not a difficulty. With any enforcement activity, rather than giving a venue or a premise a large, comprehensive list that they've got to work through, in my experience, it's best to do it in small bite-sized chunks. So you start off with the most important things to ensure that work is done first, and then you continuously go back and work your way down the list that way. I think the danger is if you try and do it all at once, it becomes, some of these clubs are quite small, they don't have full-time, you know, a lot of the, you know, it's volunteers that do the work. And if you give them a full list of things that need to be done, quite often they find it quite a big pill to swallow. So we give them small bits at a time. Did that answer the question you asked me? Okay. If you can imagine with an inspection, you'll find things that are particularly high risk, that are particularly important to get sorted out. So, for example, if you've got something like, I don't know, fire doors that aren't working properly, then obviously that's top of the list, and that's something that you would get sorted out quite quickly. The smaller elements that aren't so significant in isolation, you would leave till later on. Does that?
Thank you. Can I remind members we need to use the microphones for the webcast? Finally, I think Councillor Philip Hudson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What I'm about to talk about became more prevalent last night when I had a phone call from the chairman of a parish council in my borough. So Ironman, what do we do to look at the impact on local communities, on the route that they use? Drake and the Clay, which is in my borough, give dissatisfaction, and they're not very happy with the route that the Ironman takes. They have had visits from the people from Ironman this year who've attended their meetings, but I was told last night by the chairman of the parish council, although this event is taking place this Sunday, there are still residents in Draycote that haven't had any notices telling them about it. So I think that for future we need to be looking at what impact does this have on our rural communities. I know that particular village are not very happy, and they're asking, can an alternative route be made so that it doesn't sort of cut them off for the morning. But more than anything, they're telling me, and I don't know because I've not witnessed it myself, but I'm told by the parish council chairman last night that some of the notices haven't been delivered to the residents. Thank you.
Can I again cut in on that? I think it's not so much a safety issue that is, although obviously people need to know about it, but it's more an issue for communities, and I think that's Victoria Wilson you need to speak to about that. You happy with that as a member, as the officer?
Yeah, obviously we're in close contact with the event organisers, so I'll raise that with them as a matter of urgency in relation to the notices, to ensure that that gets done. In relation to the planning, I would anticipate that they would engage quite a local level, but I will flag that up in relation to Draycott in the Clay for the next process, if that helps you.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. I've got a parish council meeting tonight, so it'd be nice and positive to report back that we've mentioned it today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. And finally, I think, David, do you want to comment on this?
Well, Chairman, only really to commend the report to the Planning Committee, and that we note the activity completed in respect of the safety of grounds for the period 1st of April to 31st of March. And I so move that to the committee.
Yeah. Can I thank the officers for a good report and for keeping us safe as a county. It is appreciated, and there are obviously some quite horrendous stories elsewhere that have happened where people haven't been on the ball. Thank you very much. And we'll move on, please, to item number 6. This is applications for permission, and we've got one item on this, and it's an application by CMEX UK Operations Limited at Pyford Brook Quarry, Kings Bromley Road, Orgreave, Alderus. I won't give you the application number, it's in the notes. And we'll start, please, with the officer, and then we've got one objector, one supporter, and the local member. Are you taking this, Matt? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Before we start, Chair, can we have this in committees all the time. Our page numbers differ to their page numbers. There's no correlation between the two. Can we get it sorted?
Please, members, can we use microphones so that people who are not able to hear and on the web can hear what's going on? Johnny.
The PDF page lags behind the page at the top by about 3 or 4 pages, so it's easy to work out.
Thank you. I think can committee, if they are concerned, speak to Kirsty at the end, and we'll carry on with this item number 6, please. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to a request for prior written approval for the extension of operating hours for the concrete plant at Pyford Brook Quarry. The request is made as a submission under a planning condition, and although these submissions are not normally reported to this committee, in this case the submission is to be determined by the planning committee because objections have been received, as will be explained. Pyford Brook is within Lichfield district and is located to the south of the A513 near to the hamlet of Orgreave, between Orwes village and Kings Bromley, To the south is Fradley Village. Access to the quarry is off the A513 with an internal access road leading up to the plant site. So the A513 running back towards the A38, and this is the position of the new access road with the concrete plant to be, that's the location of the concrete plant. And this plan shows the layout of the plant site and shows specifically the location of the concrete plant there, marked as RMX plant, meaning ready mix concrete. So it's there with the access going up to the A513. The proposed extended operating hours for the concrete plant, exporter concrete and the importer cement are requested up to the 31st of July 2023 in connection with construction works on the HS2 railway at Street Hay that require concrete to be supplied during weekends, including Sundays, as well as during the evening and night time. The proposals include limits on lorry movements and noise, which are consistent with planning conditions, as well as for noise monitoring in accordance with an approved monitoring scheme. It is proposed that the supply of concrete would take place together with the supply from the applicant's other concrete plant at Weeford Quarry. Similar proposals for extended operation of that plant at Weeford were approved on the 30th of May under the County Council's delegation scheme. Prior consent has been granted by Lichfield District Council for construction works associated with the proposed overbridges for the South Staffordshire Railway and the A38 junction in Street Hay, associated with the HS2 construction works. Some of the proposed works will need to be undertaken out of core hours, including some during the nighttime hours for short periods. This plan shows the location of Street Hay relative to Pyford Brook Quarry. So the quarry at the top of the page, and then the location of the construction works associated with crossing the South Staffordshire Railway, which is that, and the A38 there. The applicant has notified members of the Quarry's Liaison Committee of the proposed extended operational hours, and in consultation, objections have been raised by the Parish Council and District Council's Planning Officer, as well as the local member. Objections are based on the effect of the proposal on local amenity and justification for the extension of hours when the quarry has not started production. So the key issues are under two headings. Firstly, the requirements of the condition. When the planning application for development of Pyford Brook Quarry was reported to the Planning Committee for determination in July 2021, proposals for occasional extended operating hours for the production and export of concrete at Pyford Brook were accepted, and a condition was recommended, which is condition 9F, to allow for extended operating hours on the basis that the District Council granted approval for potential noisy but essential works on the HS2 railway in accordance with Section 61 of the Control of Pollution Act. Such approval has been granted for works which will involve the supply of concrete. The second matter is other matters raised by consultees and in representations. Concrete production has not yet commenced at the quarry because the new access needs to be completed before the export of concrete can commence. It is currently anticipated that highway works will be completed by the end of this month, and therefore the production of concrete during extended hours would take place during July, if approved. Again, if approved, the extended hours would take place for a period of less than 6 weeks and will be controlled by planning conditions, including reduced noise limits relating to the nighttime hours and limits on HGV movements, including a limit of 17 during nighttime hours. In addition, activities would be managed and monitored in accordance with an approved noise monitoring and mitigation plan. So in conclusion, the recommendation is to approve the request to extend the operating hours for the concrete plant to the 31st of July 2023 in compliance with condition 9F of the planning permission as described in the submitted documents, having regard to the provision for noise monitoring and limits on lorry movements during the extended hours. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. And we'll move on, please, to the first speaker who's an objector, and that is Stuart Threlfall. Can you hear us, Mr. Threlfall? We can't see you.
Yes, I can. Yes, I
Fantastic.
can. Yeah, hang on a second. I'll just.
Wonderful. Would you start your presentation? You've got 5 minutes. Thank you. Oh, we can see you as well now.
You got me. Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. Just bear with me 1 second. Right. My name is Stuart Threlfall. I'm here as a local resident objecting to this application. I also represent the parish council objecting to the original planning application, so hopefully you can recall how strongly the local community were against this site. The planning application for this site was only approved in March 2022 and then by a slim margin. So you'll be aware as to how controversial it was. This site indeed does not yet have an entrance on the road to allow any deliveries in and out, and is still in construction and has not produced any sand, gravel or concrete. As a community, we want to see how this site will operate. Many months of discussions occurred during the planning application, and we have a comprehensive set of documents detailing how it should operate, but it has yet to begin, and we therefore do not know if any problems will arise. We are keen to review the noise, the dust, the water levels in Pryford Brook, the traffic numbers, traffic control, wheel and road cleaning, HEGS relocation, vehicle bleeping, etc., but have not yet been able to do so. I am also a member of the liaison committee you referred to earlier, and we are aware from our very recent meeting that this site is not complete, and as a committee we have not yet had the chance to visit the site, so we can satisfy ourselves that planning requirements are being put in place. Things happen on a new site that have to be corrected, as was evidenced recently with the construction of the white cladded silos, when we were led to believe that from the documents issued during the original planning process that these will be coloured to blend in with the sky and landscape. While some steps are being taken to try and mitigate this error, it has taken a number of months to implement and is still wholly unsatisfactory. Problems that occur during night and weekend work are severely amplified compared to normal hour working, and I therefore think it is right that the site operates at its commencement in normal working hours so we can more easily respond to any more errors should they occur. We are fully aware within the approved planning application that there is anticipation that 24/7 working may be needed for the HS2 works. However, we strongly object that this is implemented as part of the first operation of a brand new site. We have not yet had any exposure to the workings of this site and need to see that it operates correctly when in normal working hours, even before considering out of hours working. We do realise that HS2 will need concrete. However, this world does not revolve around them, and the timing of their requirement for concrete from this site is unfortunately wrong, and it should not be considered from here as an out of hour supply, as this site has not had time to bed in. As we stated during our original planning application, this area is being severely blighted by HS2 and other construction projects. And this has been made even worse by the delay of phase 2A, meaning we will be subject to even longer, more drawn out disruption to our lives. Please do not make this worse by approving 24/7 working at this stage of this development. During the planning process, we were told that 24/7 working would be rarely needed. And in fact, your officer did mention the word occasional in his presentation. And yet here we are before the site has even opened, and there was a 3-month 24/7 application being asked for. Please do not let HS2 and the quarry industry get what they want when they want it, and listen to your community and do not approve this. Thank you. That's me finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Threlfall. We'll now move on, please, to the second speaker, who's speaking in support, and that is Emma Pearman. Are you on screen? We'll now move on, please, to... Good afternoon, Emma. Can you hear us? And can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to give your presentation? Again, you've got 5 minutes from when you start.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Good morning, members. This committee granted planning permission for Cemex's new site at Orawas back in July 2021, with the decision notice issued in March 2022 following the Section 106 agreement being signed. As members are aware, the purpose of the site was to supply concrete to phase 1 of the HS2 project, as Cemex have a contract with Balfour Beatty Vinci, who are one of the main contractors for HS2. Since then, Cemex have been working on getting the planning conditions discharged and the site ready to go. At the present time, the plant site is almost ready, with the processing plant almost built, the access road built internally as far as possible, and most of the bunds in place. Once the soils are stripped from the first phases, then the remaining bunds will be constructed. As part of the original application, Cemex applied for 24-hour working, and we explained this would be necessary at times to supply concrete to the HS2 project out of hours. The resulting decision notice allowed 24-hour working of the concrete plant, following a Section 61 application having been approved by Lichfield for the out-of-hours working for HS2. The other parameters for out-of-hours working, such as HGV numbers overnight and noise limits for the nighttime period, have already been agreed at the time of the original decision. The appropriate nighttime noise levels were fully tested and agreed at that stage. Cemex have agreed to undertake an additional period of nighttime noise monitoring once out-of-hours working commences to ensure that we're in compliance with the limits already agreed. As members are aware, Cemex also have a concrete plant at Weeford, which is also part of the supply chain for HS2, with the 2 plants being the northernmost plants along the route in the supply chain for phase 1. The out-of-hours nighttime works are taking place between the 2 sites, close to Street Hay, around 4 to 5 miles from Pyfordbrook and Weeford. As such, these 2 plants are the closest to these works, so supplying from here limits the HGV distances on the road and subsequent emissions. Both plants are required for these works, given the amount of concrete required, the limits on both plants in terms of HGV movements overnight, and for flexibility and backup purposes in case there is a problem with one of them. Cemex understand that it is unfortunate timing that we may start and go straight into 24-hour production. However, we have been working to agree the Section 278 agreement for the highway works with County Highways for over a year, and this has only just been resolved, with the works now programmed in to create the main access onto the A513 in the last 2 weeks of June. This has also coincided with HS2's request for the concrete out of hours, and as such, both of these issues have been largely out of Cemex's control. However, whilst we applied for 6 weeks out of hours working until the end of July, members can be reassured that it will clearly be a shorter period at this stage, given that the site will not be in a position to export concrete until sometime in July. Members will also be aware that a site liaison group has been established, and we will keep the liaison group, as well as the council, informed of the actual date that the out of hours working starts once we know this. Cemex always aim to be a good neighbour to the local community, and our other sites that are up and running experience minimal complaints and site managers who act swiftly to resolve any issues. Ultimately, the out-of-hours working by HS2 is required to minimise disturbance and inconvenience to local residents by undertaking works overnight to ensure that they are completed as quickly as possible and to minimise health and safety risk. The supply out of hours is crucial to ensure that HS2 meet their scheduled timetable, and without out of hours working, the local community is likely to be subject to more delays and inconvenience. As such, we appreciate the support of the County Council in allowing us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll now move on to the local member. Councillor Janet Eagland, would you like to give your presentation, please? Microphone, please.
Good morning. Many thanks, Chair, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me, the locally elected member for the Staffordshire County Council, the opportunity to speak about CEMEC's application for an extra 24 hours of working. I would like you to consider refusing permission on these grounds. This, without doubt, will have an adverse effect on all the residents living in my division of Orrewas, Orgrave and Fradley parishes. Let me give you an instance of whereabouts this is situated, this CEMEX factory. It's situated near right on Fradley Canal Junction. This is a very busy tourist spot with holiday narrow boats going in and out all day long. Visitors come from all over the country. It also houses a very busy and popular caravan park, a purpose-built nature reserve. It has a lake with a footpath around the edge and many bird boxes for birds to nest in. This is so that children and people can see wildlife up close, and this will have a disastrous effect on birds nesting and all wildlife. It is also well used by school children on a day venture outside school hours. The tourist area brings in a very important revenue to local businesses and brings employment to many local people. Reasons why this application from CEMEX for extended hours of working should not be granted. The wildlife path, open space and holiday resort all are on the boundary of the CEMEX factory. The extended hours will have an adverse effect on pollution, noise, heavy goods vehicles during the night, excess water on roads caused by the HGV vehicles, which in turn will include flooding in some areas. These extra hours from CEMEX will see HGVs, vehicles, driving through the night. The route they will take is very close to residents' home, causing disturbance of their well-being. Artificial lights and noise in and around the area where cement production takes place, especially during winter months. All these taking place on the boundary of the CEMEX cement factory. Some councillors may recall when I last appeared in this chamber, I tried to convince the planning panel members of not consenting to the original application from CEMEX. I lost that appeal by one vote. Please do not add more inconveniences to the residents in my division to suffer both day and night of HGVs travelling through their village. In conclusion, ask yourself a question. Would you like this happening to you where you live with heavy goods vehicles running in and out day and night? Many thanks, Chairman and members from the committee for listening to my reasons of why this application for CEMEX should not be granted. And if it's possible, Chair, I'd like to ask some questions.
Could you please ask questions now? Because once we go into members, you won't be able to ask questions. So if you've got questions, please ask them now.
When it suits you.
Sorry?
When it suits you.
Yeah, ask them now, please.
Okay. Yes, we talked about the liaison committee, and that has been formed with the parish representatives. I myself chair that liaison committee. I'd like to know how many times that the representative from CEMEX has been to those meetings or taken part. I'd like to, when I first came to this council to talk about the first permission of CEMEX coming into my division, no mention was mentioned about driving heavy goods vehicles through the night. I've looked it up and I can't even remember it being discussed. So that's a new one for me. The Lichfield District Council have objected to this. You read it in your notes. They've objected to it. HS2 is the curse of my division. It runs all through my division from Orrewas, Fradley, Orgreave, Street Hay and Bowley Park. That's my division. And the Street Hay development is enormous. So the people in and around the division that I represent have one way or another suffered and will still suffer if this application goes through with HS2, their working conditions of what they want from CEMEX development. I can't stress enough to you that with all the alterations that's going on in and around my division, there are times of an evening when you can't use the A38 at certain spots because Highways England are renewing their central reservation.
Excuse me, that's you are veering off the
No, I'm
agenda.
just going to carry on to talk about how it affects Street Hay.
No, I think you wanted to ask questions, and that's fine, but that should have been part of your presentation. But if you do want to mention it briefly, please, because I say it's not part of this.
Street Hay is simply cut off for anyone wanting to go to their village if they're on the south side of the A38. If you're getting bored with my questions, Chairman, I won't ask anymore.
I don't think I actually said I was bored. I did say keep to the agenda, that was all. Have you any more questions?
No.
Thank you. Right, now, as Chair...
Just before you go on, I'd like to ask a reply from the lady, Emma, who represents CEMEX, how many times she's visited this liaison panel, please, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. That was your first question, so that's absolutely fine. Could you answer that question in a second, please, Emma? Also, for my part as the chair, I think Councillor Eagland mentioned Lichfield District Council. I've got mixed messages about whether they approved it or didn't approve it. So, Mike, could you answer that question first? And the second question is, as a qualifying authority, which we are in terms of HS2, what are our commitments or statements there? Two questions from me as chair, and then we'll start and answer the questions and then throw it open to members.
Chairman, do you want Emma to answer on the attendance at liaison committee? I'm not quite sure how that's relevant, I have to say, but
well, I think that we should be working with liaison committees, so I think that is relevant.
It's not relevant whether the particular speaker has attended those.
Yeah. Well, it's a question that's been asked by a county councillor. Okay. If you answer your question first, please, Emma, and then my question to Mike, or two questions. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. So our liaison committee is attended by our social impact specialist and the development manager who works in the same team as I do. They're the two main people who attend. Despite that, I've attended all of them so far by teams. I live in Surrey, and obviously it takes a whole day to come there. So it's not really worth me and somebody else from the same team attending. So I have attended all three of them by teams is the answer. In future, it will probably just be the social impact specialist and the development manager who should be able to answer the planning questions.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question for you.
I think she's mistaken. I've got other people on this planning committee that sit on the liaison committee with me. And the last liaison committee meeting we had, the lady wasn't present. She's only done it on Teams, but she didn't even come in on Teams. There was a question asked by one of the liaison committee, and we had to get her on the telephone on screen to get the question answered.
Okay, thank you for that. Two questions from Mike, please. For Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I may have missed the second one, so you might have to recap that. The first one, Lichfield District Council Planning did object to the consultation concerns about noise, impact on residential amenity, highway safety. But obviously those are matters that we've addressed, and also that I think the report acknowledges that Lichfield District Council Environmental Health, the people who approved the Section 61 for the night works at Street Hay, had no objection. So that's the position there. The second point, Chairman, I did miss.
Second point was in terms of the Section 61. It is Section 61. As a qualifying authority, how does that affect Staffordshire County Council?
We've signed as a qualifying authority as county councils to best endeavours not to impact and delay unnecessarily applications or applications for roadworks and things like that connected with HS2. So we've signed up to that and have a commitment to support the delivery of HS2 without good reason not to, I think is fair to say.
Okay. To move on to members' comments now. Please remember this is not a full planning application. This is a variation. So we'll start with I've got Councillor Cox and Councillor Trowbridge. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just open and just support Councillor Eagland with regards to the representative from CEMEX. Whilst I appreciate that it is not actually a planning material issue, but to say that I live in Surrey is a bit detrimental towards the residents of Orrewus and certainly Kings Bromley and surrounding areas. To represent is one thing, to actually not understand the environment that you are destroying is another. And I take exception to that. I really do. And I support Councillor Eagland with that comment. I certainly believe in face-to-face meetings when we are, as representatives of the communities, are expected to be there. I expect the personnel to be there as well. And if it means getting up early in the morning to travel from Surrey, then I expect that to be the case. But I appreciate it's not a material matter under discussion. I do object to the application. I think in lines of what Stuart Trowful has said, my conclusion is that this application is premature. We are not seeing any activities other than the construction of the site. We are not seeing any activities of production. So we are not in a situation to be able to monitor properly exactly what is going on. So to increase the hours of work is premature. Because we're not, if it was to be, why wasn't it part of the application from the onset? This is now coming afterwards, so it's retrospective in one respect, knowing that they've got to have a variation on the hours. So the concerns of residents are quite clear from my division as well, in terms of Kings Bromley. Now, we are, in a sense, we have the assurances of the right turn at the site that takes you through the Orrewus to the A38. But let's be honest, we're seeing breaches regarding HS2 already, not where they have given assurances, even down in Westminster, that certain areas will not be used. Well, there is a breach, and obviously it needs policing. So this is in a sense adding to the risk of our road networks having vehicles trundling through all the time. And I say all the time because this is what we're expecting it to happen now, 24/7. And I just don't think it's fair. The comment that Emma made, that the other site receives little complaint. Well, I'm not surprised that not many people live around that site. You know, we've got Camwell and we've got Weeford, but beyond that, very little. Yeah, sure. We're talking about Kings Bromley alone, 550 dwellings. Alderness, I don't know the actual stats, but it's larger. So at the end of the day, it's a bit contentious to say that no complaints are going to be coming. I think the complaints will come if we are to give this premature application, and certainly on highways, I think that you know the network is not suitably for this. We have awful problems with flooding. I've got a flooding issue on the 513 just from Lupin Farm at Orgreave, which just falls into my division, and it looks like some real works are going to have to be done on it. So we do have those issues. So I do support to refuse it, and I'm quite happy to do it. It is premature. Now, to clarify Section 61, well, Section 61 has always irritated me for a long, long time, because invariably the environmental health approve, because there's nothing to go to refuse. Absolutely. But Section 61 can only be enforced when there's a breach. Now, so it's when you get a Section 61, it's automatically approved. There's no discussion. There's no consultation. That's right. So it's a matter of fact. So the planning department are the ones that have obviously really, that's where the weight should carry in terms of their objection and the reasons behind. So I would certainly, in my proposing refusal, would adopt the reasons Lichfield District Council have given to refuse this application, Chairman. And I formally approve, move refusal.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon and then Councillor Francis. You're on the list. There's quite I think that everyone wants to... Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. My question revolves around, well, the food chain of this, really. The second question is a bit involved, and maybe in part due to my lack of full understanding of how this works. But the first question is essentially, what's the alternative here? Intuitively, it strikes me that this is like a set of dominoes, and as soon as you kick one off, the whole lot fall. And not just the repercussions for HS2, but the repercussions for the area of Lichfield and surrounds. We have two options. We either delay this, or we refuse it outright. If either of these options, what is, for example, going to be the disturbance on A38? For instance, if we refuse it, then the trucks can only move during the day. That's bound to extend the disruption on the A38. And there's most probably more disruption and more difficulties going down the line. This is part of a food chain. And I think we can't see it simply in its own right, but we have to see it in the context of as a whole. And that is not playing second fiddle to HS2. That's for the benefit of our community. So this is far more involved than just deciding about what happens at the quarry. It's seeing it in the round. And I think we need a broader understanding of what that looks like. The second question, which I'm afraid is a bit tangential, and you'll have to excuse me for it, but cement is a very, very high CO2 emitter of greenhouse gases. We all know that. That's why the recent deal is to stuff the CO2 into the North Sea from certain local cement manufacturers. And my understanding from the report and from Mike's account is that the cement is imported and the concrete is exported from the quarry. So the question to my mind is, where is the cement coming from? And what are the implications for the cement manufacturer in terms of the emissions if we don't approve this? I think we need to know that, because we have, in my mind, we have a responsibility to society as a whole in terms of making a decision that doesn't implicate further greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I fully accept that that second question is somewhat eccentric. I don't think the first question is, though. And I'd appreciate a view on both.
We'll take one more from John Francis, have some answers, and then we'll move on to the other.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I was involved in the planning application for this site at the time. And I did say at the time that concrete manufacture on this site, because of the bottom pits, and I know the site very, very well. I drive past it all the time to go to Burton and Derby. And I did say at the time that they probably would need 24/7 working on this, because when you start pouring concrete into big spaces, the concrete has got to be delivered on time, all the time, without any break, because of the problems with integration and setting and cracking. There's no doubt about that. But as this is a variation on condition, I'll support Janet wholeheartedly on this, because I've got the same thing coming through my division, and there's going to be a big flyover like this one, with massive piling, big structures, and a lot of concrete, with a lot of lorry movements. And it's just not on. I object to the variation on this condition, because we knew it was going to come. And it's just not on. We as members have voted here to look after our constituents. This is not looking after our constituents at all, at all. And HS2 are a law unto themselves. And as far as a variation on this condition goes, I'm against it.
Could we now have some sort of answers for the three first speakers?
Okay, I'll pick up some of those, and Matt can pick up some as well. Just to kick off to begin with, this is not a variation of the planning permission. The condition already says that extended hours are allowed, subject to getting a Section 61 approval. So provision was already in place to allow this. It's worth pointing out as well that although we originally applied for 3 months, we're already now in June, and as has been explained earlier, the access won't be complete probably till the end of this month because of delays in getting the necessary approvals for the design of the access. Works are underway as much as they can, but obviously that final design had to be signed off. So it's likely that if any production comes from this site, it'll be in July. They've only applied till the end of July, so we're talking about a relatively small window. They've also applied separately for approval in the same sort of way, with the same sort of condition at Weeford Quarry. They've got that approval. There was no objections. It's been dealt with by officers under delegated powers, so they can produce the concrete from Weeford Quarry as well. But clearly, CEMEX want this as well. This could be the first of other applications, but this is for a specific window, so members need to appreciate that the A38 closure is being programmed in, as the rail closure, which, if members are aware, these things can take 2 years to arrange in advance, so they've got a precise window that they need to do it. The concrete pours need to be done in that time. So that's why they've applied, that's why we put the condition in place, so that these are, you might say, limited periods where they've got to get the approval first, and that was the principle behind the condition that's in place. So again, it's not a variation of the permission, it's in compliance with a condition that's already there. That's what they're seeking to do, to comply with that condition. Other than that, the prematurity point that's been made. I think it is, yes, very unfortunate this is the first activities on site. There's been delays all the way through, and again, I guess to some extent, as CEMEX have pointed out, it's out of their hands. This is the window. This is when they need the concrete pour. This is when the road's been programmed to close. This works are going ahead now at Street Hay. The rest of HS2 is another story, isn't it? Well, that's another story. But and don't forget, with this particular site, it's in the legal agreement. This is to supply phase one. So it's specific to that as things stand at the moment. So that's important to remember as well. Other than that, I think the points about CO2, I think Matt can explain that one. It's worth bearing in mind that, again, there's this window. If CEMEX didn't produce it from here, they're under contract to supply concrete. They'd perhaps have to go further afield, but concrete can only travel so far before it starts setting as well. And I mean, Matt will touch on this. The point being that, in a way, it's better that the lorry movements are from a concrete plant closer than a long way away. Again, that helps reduce CO2 emissions. I think I'm jumping into stealing Matt's thunder there, but Matt, if you want, is there anything else you want to add on that?
Not a great deal I can add to that, other than the fact that we did consider the issue of carbon emissions when we first dealt with the application, and that this was a very important point about where should the concrete plant be situated to feed into the HS2 works. And clearly there was some benefit to the fact that obviously a big constituent of the concrete, or the big element of the concrete, will be the actual mineral that's extracted from the quarry. So the cement is probably a lesser ingredient, obviously important, but you know, it comes from far perhaps. But the saving of transporting sand and gravel by the fact that the concrete's manufactured on the site where the sand and gravel comes from will help with the carbon emissions in that way. But it's about transport really, rather than issues about carbon emissions from the manufacture of the cement. That's going to happen wherever it's happening, but with this particular solution of the concrete plant being where it is, it's about efficient traffic movements and getting as close as you can in terms of supply.
Keep your microphone off. Caroline Trowbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I looked through the relevant planning history, page 39. You have to click on a few links. But the Weeford Quarry had no objections from Lichfield District, no objections from the parish. In fact, no objections from any consultee, whereas this one has had objections from Lichfield District. It didn't get a response from the parish, and then the local members also objected. So in my view, that shows the weight of what's happening here. Plus, it was for 26 movements over a Sunday, not 103. When you look at 103 movements, if they're saying over a six weeks period they need that extra 103, couldn't that be split into 17 extra a day instead of it being a Sunday? Because you're looking at one of the driest months and the local people not even having one day free to sit outside without the dust and dirt. So that's my first question. My second was, what did I put here? Forgotten where I was now. I was all organised for earlier. It was something the lady said, and I thought, never mind, I've got a question now.
Thank you.
Is that allowed? Are you allowed to sort of go back and try and justify a because I do agree with you, the shortest journey's the best. Sorry.
Okay, we'll have two more members speak and then come back on that one. So we've got Philip Hudson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in 2021, the committee made a decision which went against a policy that the full council had put in place in 2017 about quarries, but that's history. I'm disappointed that here we are in 2023 and the site still hasn't been completed and ready. I'm looking at the extended hours. Now, on page 33, it tells us that there are a couple of other jobs that are going to happen between April 2023 and March 2024 regarding works between 6 o'clock and midnight, and then from April 23 to March 24 overnight. So does that mean that they're going to come back and ask for some more extensions and changes in conditions? So that worries me. I'd already written down, you know, the impact on the community. Greenhouse gases, this was before Councillor McMahon got up and spoke. More traffic on the roads, heavy goods. I know the area well. I used to police it years ago as a rural patrol sergeant, and I know where all the residential areas are, and it will have a big impact on them, especially overnight. And I don't think it's right, so I will be objecting to it. I fully support the local member and the residents, and I too am getting a little bit fed up of HS2 railroading through everything just because it's HS2. We need to look at what's in the best interest of our residents and you know, as the council, and also the impact on the environment as well, because I know that the county council have signed up to our, you know, how we manage greenhouse gases and the greener environment. So I will be objecting to it and fully support the local member and the residents.
Thank you. And can we have Tom Loughborough Rugg, I think you've indicated.
Good morning, Chair. It's quite difficult for me to, I find it a bizarre situation because though this application affects Morelos and Fradley, the termination of the works where the concrete is going to be transported to is right outside where I live. So I question whether HS2 will keep to its word, because I know for a fact that the impact upon my colleague's division is just immense. The A38 closure, which is where I actually live, is causing absolute mayhem, and I worry that we are creating problems here. We're not only going against our plan of the future council with the environment, causing long-term impact. I'd ask whether the natural facilities have been considered, because I remember we talked about it, because there's a lot of nature reserves in this area who are quite valid, strongly valid. I note that the online the National Memorial Arboretum is not exactly happy about the impact of this upon there, so we're damaging, and I just think it's interesting that we just think that HS2 just seems to assume that it's got its work done. I remember recently, but it's just the day before Lichfield District Council went through, the HS2 was already sending letters to my flat about doing, oh wait, this is that works. So it's an assumption, but we're also talking with a project here that provides absolute no benefit whatsoever to anybody in the whole of Lichfield, and a project which needs to seems to railroad over local democracy, seems to consider people like myself as NIMBYs who are whinging. No, I think the residents of, and because I live in street area, I have a lot of sympathy with the residents of Morelos and Fradley. The idea of them having, and the idea of this being 24 hours is quite, well, it's already happening 24 hours in parts of this county without permission. So I'd question whether HS2 would even, well, I'd like firm word from HS2 and CMEX whether they'd actually listen to our complaints, because it appears to me that all from the previous debate that I was in, that they're not paying attention to them. And I would also finally like to point out that it's our duty to be, that this national project may well have to happen. It has, but we have to make sure that the areas that we represent and the county that we live in is in a place from which we can rebuild areas. So I'd like to know why exactly I'd like to know an exact date for the end of the works before I do, because we don't know, because this application could go into, and how the delays of HS2 nationally would have affected this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm not sure if you're supposed to leave the room at this point. Thank you for your comments. We've now got Councillor Snape and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank the officers for the unbiased report? It goes through both sides, the fors and the against, so I'm very pleased with that. I'd like to object to what Councillor Cox says. He says it's a premature report. I actually believe it's a late report. I sat on the last meeting where it was lost by 1 vote. Had they come for 24 hours working, I don't believe it got through at all. That's why I say it's a late report. What I object to is the drip feed of Semtex. They keep coming in with other applications. As Mike or Matt has just said, really, there's been other things going to be coming in, more changes, what's going on. That's not how this committee should be treated, I'm sorry. We are county councillors elected by the public to represent the public. The county council as a whole voted against this initially, yet on the last occasion it came, and as Councillor Eagle said, it was a very, very close vote. Had this been 24/7, I don't think it would have got through. And if I look at what Litchfield has said, there's points at 20 and 21, then Councillor Eagle's objectives, and what's been said all down the table, really. We are here for the people who we represent, not the people of Surrey, who don't have to put up with anything, I'm sorry to say. We know it needs doing, but let's do it correctly. Let's do it as we voted last time, to have it on a set thing, certain hours a day, and then see how that runs. Because there may be objections coming back that where we have to amend that. We don't know. So let's do it on what we've already voted for. Let's throw out this. I will gladly second the proposal to reject it and move forward at that. I don't think we can change anything until we've assessed what we've already agreed at the previous meeting. I think we're going against our own decision-making process if we change it without it having even started to work first. And that's my proposal, or my second.
Thank you for that. And final speaker, David Smith.
Chairman, I find the application and the discussion quite disturbing. I sympathise with all of the objections and all of the comments that have been made. I think they're fair and reasonable. But what we do have to consider is what are the implications if we don't agree to the request today? Where do we go to next? I suppose that I'm not sure with what we've got in front of us, because it's not a planning application, it's a variation. What the situation would be if we were to go to find ourselves taken to appeal over the whole thing. I also would feel that if we restrict the hours to what's currently agreed to meet the requirements for cement for HS2 is going to result in an increase in the volumes at other parts of the day. Now, we need to look at what the implications are of that. We are where we are with HS2. Most of us have our personal views about HS2, about whether we think that it's good or bad. That's not the situation anymore. It's there, it's got to be done, and the sooner it's completed and out of the way, the happier we'd all be. Can I also pick up on a point that Jan made, which I find quite disturbing? I chair 2 liaison committees, one of which is Weeford. We have had community meetings of local landowners, local communities, and the work at Weeford has been very happily completed. People are obviously unhappy about the traffic movements out of Weeford Quarry and the impact that that has. But there's a realisation that there is no alternative. The necessity for producing concrete for the construction of HS2 has got to happen. somehow. Now, we as a committee, I think, have an obligation to recognise the community concern, but in recognising that community concern, I think we have to consider what is the least of problems to the community. How can we best serve our community? And I'm not sure that refusing this application today actually serves the community as well. I'm not sure there's a better alternative. On that basis, I think that we need to consider the recommendation, and my feeling is that we need to approve it, although we're very unhappy with it. Thank you, Chairman.
Left, you haven't spoken. Are you happy with what's gone forwards? Mike Sutherland.
Thank you, Chair. And you're absolutely right. The reason I chose not to speak about it is I thought there were more knowledgeable people in this committee. What I have, and I've written my little notes here, are we being premature? And David's highlighted the last bit was, what are the implications if we say no today? Because if the operation's not commenced, we're stepping into the unknown. And I do believe planning has a high element of theory. What I'm mindful of, what I've heard here today, is maybe we should just pause on today's decision. And what are the implications of that? So that's where I am, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like the previous speaker said, I was just leaving it to the more experts, but I sympathise and agree with David's comments that if it wasn't approved, what the impact's going to be further down the road. And also, it's something that's got to be done, whether it's done today, tomorrow. So I would be looking to approve it.
Okay, and could I ask the officers, we've got a very definite question here from two members. What happens if the committee refuses this?
Well, first off, we need grounds for refusal like we do with any planning decision. I know I've heard that obviously reference has been made to Lichfield District's comments and that they would be used. So I'd be just looking at those to see there are grounds. I mean, some of those grounds refer to traffic. The extended hours are for Saturday night and Sunday and overnight during the week. And there are 17 movements to take place between 6 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock in the morning. And then the same would take place on a Saturday night and a Sunday, as well as extended operations on a Sunday. But this would be for a period up to the end of July. In the meantime, there was provision in place for noise monitoring to be carried out, and obviously the liaison committee to be informed, and through the liaison committee, the parish and what have you would be informed of when these operations are taking place. As I say, it is for a limited period. There is provisions in place for monitoring. There's provisions in place to limit the traffic movements at night. During the day, obviously, there are more traffic movements, but I would make the point again that, you know, this is for a specific period in time, for a specific piece of work on HS2 at Street Hay and a limited period. And as I say, remember as well that the site itself won't probably be online and able to produce concrete into July anyway, so it's, you know, but in terms of the principle, I mean, just to be clear, again, the point has been made that this is a new proposal. It isn't a new proposal. This was at committee, reported to committee, that they would need these extended hours because they know HS2 would have these sort of situations. So it was considered by the committee first time round, and the condition was subsequently put in place, which we're looking at today, which includes the Section 61 approval, which they've got. I acknowledge the point, perhaps, and I don't know, because it's not my area, that the Section 61 is a rubber stamp exercise. Well, if that's the case, then so be it. But from our point of view, it's because of that Section 61 is in place that then we're allowing this. So it's not something that they can do automatically at any time when they want. We put the condition in place so that they had to get our approval. And that approval comes by looking at some of the issues like we're doing today and making sure there are provisions in place to make sure that it's controlled and it's reasonable and proportionate. Hence, it's 17 nighttime movements, and noise monitoring would take place during the night to check compliance with specific noise limits for nighttime. In terms of refusal, John might have to help me with this, but obviously they can appeal that. But I think that, you know, in reality, on this occasion, that's not going to help them because appeals take however many months or whatever to do. But clearly, this may not be the first occasion they need to do that. And again, that will be dictated by HS2 and when they need to do these extended concrete pours. And if they can't get it from here, that concrete will have to come from further afield, or it could come from Weeford. But clearly this site was also intended, and why it was permitted and came forward to when it did was to supply HS2 with concrete. Clearly some of that is during the day, but clearly HS2 for operational reasons and to avoid those, minimise disruption, and for technical reasons needs these pours to take place at night over an extended period. So that's all the background to where we are with this particular one. So there are, as being pointed out, some important wider considerations here that obviously by pouring concrete at night, you're minimising disruption to the A38 and to the railway during the day for when most people are using it. So, you know, I think that point has been made by members, and I think that's an important one just to bear in mind in terms of the wider consideration that we have here. There are limited impacts directly around the quarry itself, but there are controls and limits on the movements at night. There are controls in terms of noise limits at night. So I think there are, you know, valid considerations to take on board as well. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. John.
Yes, I can confirm that there is a right of appeal. In many senses, this is like a full planning application. So there is a statutory right to appeal. Reasons would have to be given, as with a full planning application, the reasons for refusal based on material planning considerations.
Right. Where are we now? We're in a situation where we've got a proposal to refuse the recommendation, which is to approve the request to extend the operating hours, as has just been gone over by by Mike from planning, and we've got a seconder from Councillor Snape. First thing, before we go to a vote, we need to know what we're voting on. So, Councillor Cox. And please bear in mind that there's also a Staffordshire perspective on this. What would be your grounds for refusal?
Chairman, I would move for refusal on the impact of traffic on residential amenity and highway safety and noise. The restricted operation alleviates some of the potential impacts. However, the proposed alteration to working hours condition would result in detriment to neighbours' amenities. So I firmly believe that in terms of, I appreciate that it's a Staffordshire here, I recognise that fact, but I'm also recognising the impact that this will have on the immediate residents. We're talking about a lot of people. We're not talking about few people, we're talking about a lot of people. And the reason I said premature, it wasn't so that the report was premature, the application is premature because we're not seeing actually what is going to happen on this site. And to receive an amendment already, or whatever we want to call it, to have these hours is to me is premature, and I'd like to see how the plant is production. before we receive it. It may be that it comes back again and we have to look at it. Now, I could say defer it, but I'm not too sure defer it till when. So there's no deferral as an option. But I certainly think that the reasons I've said, I'm sure that they could be substantiated at appeal.
I'm going to ask you just to sort of come back again with a little bit more clarity in your reasons in a second, because we do need to make sure this is right, because I'd imagine it would go to appeal or Secretary of State, whatever it comes to. After Paul. Paul, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are exactly the same as Councillor Cox's, really, the same grounds as this has been put in the report, what the adverse side of things are going to be. But just to say, every matter we deal here can go to appeal. So the fact it can go to appeal should never be a reason why we throw things out. We have a Semi-Crow panel. We've gone to judicial review, but we won the judicial review. We must never be fearful that if we disagree with what's coming on here, it may go to appeal. That's an irrelevance, I'm sorry. We make a decision on what's on the document, not the fact that the appeal may change it. Appeal, as we all know, is a totally different body. It can go to, say, a judicial review, go to High Court and go anywhere. We make our decision on what's here today, and I think from what I've heard today, this is what I want to go with. And just take the appeal out of the way. I think this is the right and proper thing. People of the higher authority make a different decision. That is their role to do it. But as I, as a county councillor, see it this way, and that is why I'm going to vote against it, but for the same reasons that Councillor Cox has given.
Okay, so having had a couple of seconds to reflect, what exactly is your proposal, please, Richard?
I propose we refuse the application before us on the grounds of the impact of traffic on residential amenity and highway safety and noise. And I might add also a detrimental likelihood on health, because as what's already been said, surely, you know, what I'm failing to get to understand is that the application that was approved was satisfactory at the time, and yet only obviously half the committee it only just got through the system. But that application was received as a whole, and obviously it was approved. And here we are 2 years down the line, having to look at this again. And what evidence has come forward to change it? And that's why I'm saying it's premature. And I stand by that it's a premature application, but I will move that it's on the grounds of residential amenity and highway safety and noise. Right, I don't know what more reasons I can provide.
That's fine. We just needed to be some clarity. John or Mike, could you just confirm that that would be a reason for refusal legally?
Obviously depends on the circumstances of the case. Those are the types of reason that are quite commonly given. As far as highway safety is concerned, bear in mind that the professional officers have not raised that as an issue. Residential amenity, it is slightly more subjective, an issue. And again, on noise, there are noise monitoring conditions, and as far as I'm aware, there's been no objection by professionals in respect of noise. So we do have to be in a position to, or if there is a refusal, we would have to be in a position to back up those, any reasons for refusal that we do give. We would have to be in a position to back those up with evidence at an appeal. There's a risk of costs being awarded against us if we can't.
Okay, thank you. Mike? Yeah.
Just to pick up, I think a point's been made, I'll just help out. Mention of flooding. has been mentioned. This proposal, I can't see why in itself it would create any flooding issues. That's down to the weather, but that's no different during the day or at night. So this is a proposal to extended hours at night. So in terms of flooding, I'm not sure. The prematurity argument wasn't mentioned. It wasn't picked up as a reason for refusal. I just want to throw that back in case members... Well, it wasn't by Councillor Cox when he was just recapped then, so I'm putting it back in case he wants to mention that. Okay.
I would move that it's a premature application.
Okay. I'll just pick up on the points. Well, you've probably heard me say already that, yeah, residential amenities is a fairly broad one. Highway safety, there aren't objections on highway safety grounds from a technical point of view. Again, you just bear in mind we're talking traffic, the extended hours between at night, but there's been no issues with it's talking about 17 movements at night. Noise, we have controls of noise and monitoring to put in place to ensure compliance with the limits for nighttime working. And yeah, the prematurity point, I think, is, yes, it's unfortunate this is the first operations that first thing they want to do is extend the hours before they've even started. I can sympathise with why that's unsatisfactory, but I think that's a case of we are where we are in that sense. The timing of when the quarry becomes operational and the timing of when HS2 needs the concrete, it's one of those things. Just to say as well, it's for a short, limited period, this to the end of July. Obviously, there's a potential that they could come back if HS2, if there are other projects like this, other circumstances that they need them. But there was provision put into the plan, into the permission for that, hence they get the section 61 first, and then we have to consider that as they come to us again. And just to be clear, this isn't a variation of the permission, this is just a compliance with a condition of the existing permission. They've also got this similar arrangement on the Weeford permission, and they've had the approval through from that because there was no objections on that particular one. So yes, I think it's an unfortunate set of circumstances we're in terms of the timing of the quarry becoming operational, and the first thing that they asked for is these extended hours. As I say, it would be for a pretty short period of time for the first one in any event, which is an opportunity to see that they can comply, if not least, which is no different to any other operations that they have to comply with, any other conditions they have to comply with. And they would have to comply with the noise, the traffic movements here for this particular period of time.
Chair. Could I just add to what the officers just said? It isn't the weather and the rain that causes the flooding in this particular part of Orrewas and Orgreave. It's the Pyford Brook. The Pyford Brook, that's the problem there. If we have excess rain, yes, it overflows, and it's well known in this area. If you dig a hole, you turn up with water at the end of it. It's like a beach when you dig a hole in the sand. The other thing is, the officers just said about it only till the end of July. What guarantee can he give me that I can go back and tell my residents, oh, it's all right, we've only got it to happen? The officers assured us that we haven't got to wait, we've only got to the end of July and then it finishes. What guarantee have I got?
I think that's something you need to ask the officers about afterwards. Okay. I'm going to take a question from Caroline Trowbridge and a question from Philip Hudson. Then we're going to nail down exactly what the reason for refusal is.
Sorry, it's just I can't vote without asking this question. It says on here, because I wasn't aware of what a Section 61 agreement is, so I've been reading up. And it says the local authority must give consent on a Section 61, as long as, and it's 5 things they've filled in the paperwork basically, and if not, you've got to respond even within 28 days. So I'm really confused, because if this was a planning application, to me it would be very simple, as in a normal planning application, but because it's all to do with they've already got, they just need to apply for this Section 61 agreement. I'm now really confused on how to vote. I couldn't vote for the highways bit that was mentioned because our highways officers have said it's all fine. But the bit about the adverse effect on residents, I think I could, but then now reading this 61 agreement, I don't think we can. So I need you to help me. I'm stuck.
I don't think that, unless we have more clarity on the 61, that I can advise you anyway, because we are a committee.
But Mike can give me the advice on 61.
Yeah, I think Matt's keen to do that.
Yeah, on the Section 61, remember that that's an approval for the works at Street A, which Councillor Loughborough-Rudd mentioned. So that's we've tied the condition for the extended working on the proviso that there is a real requirement on the construction works, and so that's therefore linked to HS2. But the Section 61 doesn't apply to the extended operation at the concrete works, which is a separate matter. So that's where our deliberations are relevant, because we're there sort of with an opportunity for extended working for the concrete plant, but only on the basis that there's a real need on the construction site during those extended hours, which is evidenced by the fact that the District Council have given the Section 61 approval. So there will be, I know previously people have said about these opportunities being occasional, but that's, as Mike said previously, the Section 61s and the requirements for them are out of the control of CEMEX, because that's part of the HS2 construction programme, but CEMEX are there to supply and serve that need, and that's what we're dealing with.
Okay, right, so very quickly please, Philip, because time's going on.
Yeah, John mentions professional advice from the professionals. Based on what evidence? It hasn't even started yet, so how can we give professional advice on something that doesn't even exist, about the environment, about noise, about that? They can't. And my experience of some of the professional advice from highways is that they put things in a computer, it comes back, and I know for full well that some of the things they say are safe are not safe, because as a retired police officer, I know those roads very well. Anyway, that's one point. The other thing is that we've got to look at the impact on the residents as a whole, the environment, the quality of life. This is where I feel that our objection should be, on the quality of life of our residents, on the impact on the environment. It's not just traffic, it's a great big picture, and we need to look at the bigger picture here as a whole. It's the impact on that area as a whole, on the quality of life for the residents, on their health. We've been looking at the environment, we've got greenhouse gases, the impact of more heavy goods vehicles being used in the area. But the professional advice, based on what? Because it hasn't even started yet.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, I think we're sort of coming to a conclusion on this. Councillor Cox, am I right in suggesting that you want to refuse this on the grounds of prematurity, road safety, amenity, impact on amenity and quality of life, and traffic management?
Yes, those listed, but I'm keen to obviously ensure that environmental health issues such as noise and the detriment that it will be to residents within the area, and we're talking about a lot of residents.
So prematurity, road safety, and impact.
The impact on traffic. Start again. Impact of traffic on the residential amenity, and highway safety, because I do believe that highway safety should be in there, because the consequences are
no, just keep to the point.
Yeah, well, I've gone through it more than once, and noise, environmental health issues, course, from the extended hours.
Right. Okay. And
I'm happy to take my seconder comments as well.
yeah, we've got to be specific about this.
Yeah,
we
well,
can't just
I
take
think we have
comments.
been Pacific.
Johnny, very, very quickly, please.
Please forgive me on this, but I just wonder if Richard Cox is conflicted with this being the local member. If this was a South Staffs issue, there isn't a South Staffs member here, and the debate would look very different. So this is a question of governance, and it's a question for the chair and the vice chair as to whether this is appropriate.
Yeah. Well, we are a committee. We've had the training, and as such, you will vote appropriately on that. Yeah. In terms of the local member, Councillor Eagland is the local member, so we are safe on that one.
Is prematurity included in that one?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Would you add prematurity, John? Would you just go sort of see if you can filter through that and just tell us what you think?
Well, according to my notes, we've got impact of traffic on residential amenity, highway safety, noise, environmental health issues from the extended hours, and prematurity. That, I would say that's probably within residential amenity.
We'd like it as those words, please, John.
Okay, so are you happy with that, Councillor Cox?
I am happy
Right, okay.
about that.
That was as simple as yes, no question. Can we therefore have a vote on this proposal, which is as outlined by our legal officer? All those in favour, please show.
In favour of refusal.
In favour of this proposal, please show hands. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And all those who reject the proposal. Okay. The scores on the doors are
7 against 4.
okay. So we now go back to the original recommendation, which
move it, Chairman. So move approval, Chairman.
Okay. On that, please. A seconder from Asfat, and could we show of hands on that, please? So this is to approve the original recommendation. And those against the original recommendation?
Against. 6-4, 4 against.
So the original recommendation has been carried by the committee. Thank you all for a very useful discussion, and I hope that officers and residents take on board what's been said and the concern from this committee about the quality of life. And Jan, thank you for a spirited proposal. Okay, can we now move on to oh yeah, the 2 seconds. What I propose is, because we've been 2 hours solid and quite an intense 2 hours, we have a 5-minute break, and then come back here for. How much longer are we going to be? There'll be another half hour. Mike. Yes, we're still core it, and you did ask me before the meeting. Yeah. Members, are we ready?
We'll have to find out and understand that better for next time. We've had this issue.
Okay, thank you for all coming back in good time. And we'll now move on, please, to item number 7. This is you, Mike. Planning, Policy and Development Control, full year report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for members' benefit, it's not pages 95 to 102, it's 43 to 50, I think, in the agenda pack. So this report looks at the year 22-23. I previously reported in December last year, halfway through, but we look at policy making, development control, staff and caseload. Our annual monitoring report, which we produce surprisingly annually, concluded there's no need to update our minerals or waste local plans. So consequently, work on preparing to review those plans remains on hold, and also because of the government's taking a fresh look at planning reforms, which I'm sure members are aware of. Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think there's been a recent scrutiny. Yeah, so I think that's affecting all local plans, not just our minerals and waste plans. We tend to be a bit of a sideshow in that respect. The priority, obviously, around housing and delivery, hence district local plans are the main focus for a lot of that review work. So this is Appendix 2 in the report, which just gives you a bit of a summary of our performance, I say, in the previous 12 months. So that's the major applications. So these are our minerals and waste applications primarily. And our target is 90%, government target is 60%, and you can see overall 94%, and that's decisions made within time or within an agreed extension of time. And 17 out of 18 were on time or within that extension of time. The one that wasn't was one that we refused at Whiston Golf Course, which members may be interested to know has now gone to appeal, and that appeal only started this week. So that's a written reps appeal, and we're just starting the process. Whiston Golf Course up near Oakham. Other points to make: we deal with counties' own developments, what we call majors and minors, and that's about the scale, and you can see relatively small numbers these days. We used to deal with a lot more of those, but not so many these days. So school developments, that type of thing. You can see the numbers there. And then applications determined under delegated powers. Again, the target is 80%, and we're at 81%. So 17 of the 21 decisions were by officers, but that's about on target. So I think members are interested to know that. This is just a quick comparison with where we've been in the previous 2 years. Again, you can see the numbers at the top there in terms of major applications. 18, the previous year 18, prior to that 24, and then you can see the numbers going down again. Similar numbers, although the non-majors, the non-major applications and schools and things, I say, those numbers have declined over the years, and that continues. Just a quick recap of the team. Mayor's manager and then team leaders, including Matt here and Julie Castry-Denton. Principal officers, David Bray. Graham Allen has come back to us after 3 years retirement on a casual part-time basis to help us out, initially because of one of our officers being suffering from long COVID, who I'm pleased to say is now back working full-time, but we're also retaining Graham to continue to help us out, partly because we've also got a vacancy at planning officer, senior planning officer, Andy, who's retired recently, and then currently our team leader in planning information has also recently retired. we are supported by Catherine Whitehouse, who actually was in the room early just to see how the committee works, but she's relatively new to the team and is learning the job very quickly. We've also got Laura Croshaw, who helps us, not mentioned on that, I should have done, who works across a wider team, but also does some work for us to support some of the, fill in the gaps where we've got vacancies at the moment, helps us out in that respect. Chairman, that pretty much concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Councillor Cox.
I'd like to firstly commend the report and excellent percentages and well done. I just wanted clarification, however, because I do get concerned about extension of time, that whether this is like moving the goalpost to obviously achieve the good result. So I'm conscious of how much, in terms of that extension, is it a true reflection of the good work? I'm not saying it's criticising officers or anything, but I am concerned, you know, that we can be moving the goalpost opposed to actually hitting the target. Maybe you could just clarify that.
Okay. It's a fair question, and in truth, we rely on it heavily. I think you've got to bear in mind as well the nature of the applications we get. They're never straightforward. They're always different. This isn't just a house extension followed by another house extension. So they do tend to take time to work through the issues. I mean, you've seen the example today, which was a submission of details that's come to committee, and a lot of work's gone into that. But generally speaking, yeah, our applications we do work through thoroughly, and they do take time. We do work with applicants on that basis, and therefore we don't get, for example, appeals against non-determination or too many complaints, or hardly any complaints about taking too long. We move them through as quick as we can, but in a professional manner that hopefully satisfies everybody, and we get the right result at the end. Thank you.
Dear Chairman, only to move the recommendation of the report be noted.
John?
Yeah, considering the government are reviewing all the policies, Mike, where does that leave us? Are we in limbo or what? We've just got to use the old policies until new stuff comes through. Does it give us a problem?
No, I think we've reviewed our plans fairly recently in the last few years. Obviously, we monitor things like the National Planning Policy Framework and to see what's changing. I say a lot of the focus is around changes in policy around housing delivery and things like that, not so much in our area. We're satisfied our plans are up to date and working well. The sorts of things we're aware of is things like HS2 is increasing demand for sand and gravel, obviously, and therefore the allocations of sites to extend quarries we're getting through, so to speak. So that is an area that we are closely monitoring, and that's one area that might drive forward in due course the need to review and update the plan. We might to find more sites for the future, in effect. But that in terms of policies from a day-to-day point of view and applying those in terms of how we determine applications, no, we're up to date as far as that's concerned.
Right, I'm glad that Janet Egan wasn't here when you said that last statement. In a normal situation, I would ask you to write to the persons involved to say thank you for and what a good job's being done, but you can't really write a letter to yourself. So could you...
I can explain it to everybody else in the team.
So I was going to say, would you, on behalf of the planning committee, thank the whole team right through, because we do appreciate that it's not always easy, and as members we don't make life easy for you all the time, but I think it goes with the job. So if that's okay with the committee, I'll say thank you. Okay. Right, we'll move on to exclusion of the public. Sorry, Paul.
Before we do that, could we say something while we've got the senior planning officers here? I'm going to go back to Crow Panel, if you don't mind for a moment. We've recently had a judicial review at Crow Panel where one of our decisions went to judicial review.
So you are...
I'm not mentioning the case itself, I'm
Right.
just going to talk about the officers. Can I just, back to you, thank you for the quality of the work that was done by our officers, it's been best part of 12 months it's been going on. We actually won the judicial review. He then came back to Crow Panel on the instructions of a judge to review it, and we went with exactly the same decision. But it was only really due to the hard work and dedication of our officers, your officers, for all the work they did. And it was what we believe was a good result, thanks to all those. I know one of us recently retired due to ill health, the senior Crow Panel officer, but every officer who was involved did a great job on behalf of the County Council. So thank you. And I'll say, while it's still in the public, just to say, they work on behalf of the whole of the residents of Staffordshire. Thank you. Thank you,
Paul, and I'm sure Mike will pass that on to the Crow Panel team. Right, we're now moving into exclusion of the public, and I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended by the Local Government Act 1972 indicated below. So, sorry ladies, thank you for coming along.